because he's not very intelligent and undoubtedly remains damaged by the early death of his mother, Diana. And he very foolishly blames the media for her, in his words, murdered her, which is complete nonsense.
Hasn't got the intellect, hasn't got the legal advice, he hasn't got the ability. And there was two agents who told horrible stories about her bullying and her oppression.
It didn't start with a press release. It didn't start with a palace statement. It didn't even start with a headline. It started with a whisper. The kind of whisper that slides through private WhatsApp groups, leaks into royal YouTube channels at 3 a.m., and then detonates across the internet before breakfast. A so-called secret album, a child the world barely sees, and a father now screaming ambush. Because overnight, the story flipped. Not Harry and Meghan controlling the narrative, not the Sussex brand dictating timing, tone, and tears. This time, someone else pulled the trigger, and Prince Harry wasn't ready. This time, it was Tom Bower. That line, "the walls are closing in," hits different now, because suddenly it doesn't sound like commentary. It sounds like prophecy. For years, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle built their post-royal life on one sacred vow: their children would be off limits. No palace balcony shots, no trooping the Calor smiles. No casual paparazzi strolls. Archie and Lilibet would be protected from the machine that chewed Harry up as a boy. That promise became the moral high ground, the shield, the justification for everything. And now, that shield looks cracked. Because what's circulating behind the scenes isn't just gossip about timelines or birth announcements anymore. It's claims of images, moments, context. A so-called album that allegedly exists, not splashed across tabloids, not officially released, but quietly referenced, hinted at, and weaponized through implication. And Harry knows exactly what that means. Tom Bower is not a random internet troll chasing clicks. He's not a TikTok psychic or a faceless Reddit thread. He's a biographer with a reputation built on one uncomfortable principle. He writes about people who don't want to be written about. And when he circles, it's never accidental. Bower has spent decades dismantling powerful figures by doing one thing relentlessly: talking to the people no one expects to talk. Assistants, former friends, ex-staff, people who felt discarded, silenced, or erased once the fairy tale moved on. When he turned his attention to Meghan Markle, insiders say alarm bells rang quietly inside Montecito. Not publicly, not dramatically, but legally, strategically. Because Bower doesn't bluff, he documents. And now, with whispers of a secret album tied to Lilibet, the panic isn't about what's been shown. It's about what could be shown. Because once the idea is planted that unseen material exists, photos, moments, inconsistencies, context, the internet does the rest. Every past image gets re-examined. Every carefully curated Netflix frame gets slowed down. Every holiday card becomes forensic evidence. And Harry is watching it happen in real time. People close to the couple describe a sharp shift. Not sadness, agitation. Not fear, anger. Harry reportedly sees this as a deliberate setup, a coordinated media ambush designed to provoke a reaction he spent years trying not to give. Because reacting is the trap. But silence is worse. The irony is brutal. The man who fled royal life to escape press intrusion now believes his daughter is being pulled into the same storm. Not by paparazzi, but by implication. By suggestion. By a narrative he can't control and can't legally erase without making it louder. And that's what's driving him to the edge. What makes this situation combustible isn't just the allegation of images, it's the timing, financial pressure, brand fatigue, public skepticism, Netflix scrutiny, Spotify fallout, a memoir that opened doors but burned bridges. All of it has left the Sussex operation exposed in a way it hasn't been before. When money flows, stories get managed. When leverage disappears, silence becomes suspicious. Bauer's broader claims have already reopened old wounds, questions about births, timelines, shifting narratives, and the carefully managed fog surrounding Archie and Lilibet's early days. Not because children should be public property, but because Harry and Meghan made their family story a commercial product while demanding immunity from curiosity. That contradiction is now impossible to ignore. And Lilibet, the most unseen royal child in modern history, sits at the center of it. Named after a queen, born in California, rarely photographed, never casually present, existing more as a concept than a child the public recognizes. That absence once read as protection. Now, critics are reframing it as control. And when control slips, panic sets in. Inside Montecito, sources describe Harry as glued to his phone, scrolling endlessly, watching breakdown videos, reading comment sections he swore he'd never read again. Every mention of the album, every rumor, every insinuation. Each one lands like a punch. Because this isn't about reputation anymore, it's about legacy. Harry knows what it's like to grow up under a microscope. He knows how rumors harden into mythology. He knows how silence gets rewritten as guilt. And the idea that his daughter's name could become a keyword attached to controversy is his worst nightmare. That's why the word ambush keeps surfacing. Not leak, not report, ambush. Because in Harry's mind, this isn't journalism, it's provocation. A calculated move meant to force his hand to make him either explode publicly or retreat further into isolation. And neither option ends well. The palace predictably says nothing. No denials, no confirmations, no soft grandfatherly gestures, just distance. The kind of distance that feels less like neglect and more like insulation. They've seen this before. They know storms pass, but only if you don't step into them. Harry, however, doesn't have that luxury. He left the institution. He burned the safety net. He chose transparency selectively and now finds himself trapped by it. Because once you sell your truth, others feel entitled to question it. And Tom Bauer is very comfortable asking questions. Whether the album exists in full, in part, or only as leverage almost doesn't matter anymore. The damage is in the suggestion, the possibility, the implication that something unseen contradicts something already sold. That's why this moment feels different. This isn't a tabloid cycle. This isn't a Twitter feud. This is a credibility test. And Prince Harry knows it, because the story is no longer about photos. It's about control. It's about who owns the narrative. And it's about what happens when the people you tried to silence decide they're done waiting. The walls aren't just closing in on Montecito. They're echoing. And here's where the situation turns from messy to dangerous. Because once a narrative like this escapes into the wild, it stops belonging to facts and starts belonging to momentum. And momentum is something Prince Harry understands better than anyone. He grew up watching it destroy his mother in slow motion. That's why those around him say this moment has triggered something deeper than anger. It's fear layered with DJ vu. The same feeling of losing control while the world speculates, debates, and dissects the most personal parts of his life like it's entertainment. Only this time, it isn't about him, it's about his daughter. The supposed secret album doesn't need to be published to cause damage. Its mere existence as a rumor creates a vacuum that conspiracy, curiosity, and critics rush to fill. Every old image becomes suspect. Every timeline becomes a puzzle. Every past statement gets replayed with a different lens. And that's exactly what's happening. Online forums are comparing dates. Royal watchers are rewatching interviews frame by frame. Commentators are connecting dots that may or may not exist. And the louder it gets, the more Harry reportedly feels backed into a corner. Because responding gives the story oxygen. But ignoring it makes it look true. It's the trap of modern scandal. There's no winning move. Meanwhile, Meghan is said to be approaching this from a completely different angle, where Harry reacts emotionally Finally, insiders claim she goes tactical. Legal letters, quiet pressure on outlets, strategic silence, controlled leaks meant to redirect attention. But here's the problem with strategy: when emotion is driving the public conversation, it looks cold. And the Sussex brand was built on feeling, on vulnerability, on pain shared openly. So when the response becomes legal and calculated instead of heartfelt and human, people start sensing a disconnect. That disconnect is where suspicion grows. For years, Harry and Meghan positioned themselves as truth tellers, brave enough to expose the machine. But now critics are flipping that script, asking why transparency only flows one way, outward when it benefits them, inward only when legally forced. The children sit at the center of that contradiction. They are protected, but also monetized through carefully staged glimpses. Shielded, but referenced in documentaries, interviews, and memoirs that drive multi-million-dollar deals. Kept private, yet central to the emotional core of their public narrative. You can't build a brand on your family's story and then be shocked when the public becomes invested in the details. That's the uncomfortable truth surfacing beneath the noise. The palace's silence adds another layer of tension. No supportive statement, no subtle show of unity, just the same strategic distance they've maintained since the exit. And to seasoned royal watchers, that silence feels less like indifference and more like insulation. They are not stepping into this fire. Because if there's one thing the monarchy understands, it's survival. And survival sometimes means letting a storm burn itself out while you stand far enough away that the smoke never reaches you. Harry doesn't have that luxury anymore. He chose independence. He chose to fight the media machine from outside the institution. But fighting without institutional armor means every hit lands harder. And right now, the hits are coming fast. What makes this moment uniquely volatile is the emotional symbolism. Lilibet isn't just a child, she represents Harry's attempt to rewrite his story, to create a different childhood than the one he endured, to prove he could protect his family in a way the system failed to protect him. So when her name becomes part of a public controversy, it feels like failure. That's why insiders say the word ambush wasn't used casually. Harry reportedly believes this is deliberate pressure, not just from media figures like Bauer, but from a broader ecosystem of commentators who see the Sussex story losing its protective aura and are moving in. Because once the public mood shifts, it shifts fast. There was a time when any criticism of Harry and Meghan was instantly labeled cruel or racist. That shield is thinner now. Public sympathy has been replaced with scrutiny, and scrutiny doesn't disappear just because something feels unfair. It intensifies. The financial layer makes everything heavier. Big deals bring big expectations. When projects underperform, narratives tighten. Investors want consistency, audiences want authenticity. And when those two clash, cracks appear. Bauer's insinuations hit at the exact point where credibility, privacy, money, and legacy intersect. That's why this doesn't feel like another passing royal headline. It feels like a turning point, not because of what's proven, but because of what's being questioned. And questions, once mainstream, don't go back into the shadows. So what happens next? Option 1 is the nuclear route: full transparency, documents, clarifications, direct answers that shut down speculation permanently. It would be humiliating, invasive, and deeply uncomfortable, but it would end the conversation. Option 2 is the current path: silence plus legal muscle. Hope the public gets bored, hope another scandal steals the spotlight. But this story is sticky. It involves children, legacy, and credibility. It won't dissolve easily. Option 3 is partial disclosure, enough to calm reasonable observers while maintaining privacy. But threading that needle requires trust, and trust has eroded. Harry is now caught between protecting his daughter's privacy and protecting her future reputation. Because if this cloud of doubt lingers for years, it becomes part of her story whether she likes it or not. That's the cruel twist. The very attempt to shield her may be what ensures the questions follow her into adulthood. And Harry knows what that feels like. He grew up with whispers, with photographers chasing shadows, with stories written before he could read them. He wanted to spare his children that weight. Instead, he may have created a different version of it. Quieter, digital, but just as permanent. The saddest part? None of this noise is coming from Lilibet. She's a toddler living her life. But in the adult world of power, money, and image, innocence doesn't stop speculation. So now the pressure builds. Public pressure, media pressure, institutional pressure. And history shows that when those three forces collide, something breaks. Maybe it's silence. Maybe it's a statement. Maybe it's a fracture between Harry and the system he once belonged to. But this story isn't fading. It's evolving. And the so-called secret album may end up being less important than what it triggered. A moment where Prince Harry realized that leaving the palace didn't mean escaping the game. It just meant playing it without a shield. The ambush he fears isn't just media intrusion, it's the realization that the narrative he built is no longer fully his to control. And once control slips in the royal world, it rarely comes back.